The storm does not arrive as a single explosive moment, but gathers quietly, almost invisibly, from the smallest fractures in trust, from choices made in weakness, and from emotions buried too deeply to be confronted. And this time, at the center of that growing collapse, stands Jack Abbott, a man who has spent his life believing he could control every outcome, now forced to confront the terrifying possibility that control was always an illusion. What happened on that yacht was never just a fleeting mistake, never just a lapse in judgment that could be neatly compartmentalized and forgotten. It has become something far more corrosive, a crack that runs through Jack's identity itself, widening each time he tries to deny it, deepening each time he attempts to bury it beneath routine and denial. The most dangerous part is not the act itself, but the uncertainty surrounding it. The lingering doubt about whether he acted of his own will, or whether he was pushed, manipulated, or even set up, and that uncertainty has begun to eat away at him in ways he cannot admit out loud. As Jack struggles to reconstruct the image of himself as a principled man, as a husband worthy of forgiveness, he clings desperately to his marriage with Diane Jenkins, as though it were the last stable ground beneath his feet. Yet every attempt he makes to restore that stability only reveals how fragile it has already become. Diane senses it in the hesitation behind his words, in the tension in his body, in the way he avoids certain conversations. She does not yet know the full truth, but she feels the distance, the shift, the quiet erosion of something she once believed could survive anything. That awareness does not erupt immediately into confrontation. Instead, it simmers, building pressure beneath the surface, making every glance, every silence, every unanswered question feel heavier than it should. Into that fragile, deteriorating space steps Patty Williams, not as a chaotic intruder acting without purpose, but as a force driven by her own twisted sense of clarity. Patty does not see herself as the villain of this story. In her mind, she is the only one willing to acknowledge the truth that everyone else is too afraid to face. What happened between her and Jack was not an accident, not a mistake to be erased, but a moment of undeniable connection, something raw and real that shattered the carefully constructed roles they had both been playing. Where Jack sees regret, Patty sees revelation. Where Jack sees damage, Patty sees possibility. And it is precisely that difference in perception that makes her so dangerous. Her decision to enter the Abbott mansion uninvited is not impulsive. It is deliberate, calculated, a symbolic act designed to dismantle the boundaries Jack has tried to rebuild. By stepping into his home, into the space he associates with order, family, and identity, Patty is not merely confronting him. She is invading the illusion of control he has been clinging to. She does not need to raise her voice or make threats. Her presence alone is enough to destabilize him, because she represents everything he is trying to suppress, everything he cannot explain away. Each moment she remains there tightens the pressure, forcing Jack closer to a breaking point he cannot avoid forever. Inside Jack, anger and fear begin to merge into something more volatile. He is not only afraid of losing Diane, he is afraid of losing the version of himself he has spent years maintaining. That fear manifests as defensiveness, as frustration, as an increasingly desperate need to assert that what happened meant nothing. Yet every denial feels hollow, even to him, and Patty recognizes that weakness immediately. She pushes not with force, but with certainty, with an unshakable belief that she has already changed his life in ways he cannot undo. She does not need him to admit it outright. She only needs him to react, to reveal, to crack. At the same time, Diane's growing unease drives her toward a decision she can no longer postpone. Returning home is not simply an act of routine. It is an instinctive move, guided by the sense that something is wrong in a way that can no longer be ignored. When she walks into that space and finds Jack and Patty together, the moment does not explode immediately into chaos. Instead, it lands with a devastating clarity, the kind that strips away doubt and replaces it with certainty. What Diane feels is not just anger, but betrayal in its most complex form, not only because of what may have happened, but because of what was hidden, because Jack chose silence over honesty. That realization forces Diane into an emotional corner. She must decide whether to fight for a marriage that now feels compromised at its core, or to walk away from something she once believed was worth rebuilding at any cost. But the situation is made even more unbearable by Patty's refusal to retreat. Patty does not intend to disappear quietly. She believes she has a claim, not just to Jack's attention, but to his truth, to the version of him that emerged when his defenses were lowered. In her mind, Diane is the one clinging to an illusion, and she is determined to prove it, no matter how much damage it causes. Caught in the middle of this escalating conflict is Kyle Abbott, who watches the foundation of his family begin to fracture in real time. Kyle's concern does not remain passive for long. What begins as worry quickly transforms into a need to act, to protect, to intervene before everything collapses beyond repair. Yet the more he learns, the more he begins to connect the situation to a larger pattern, one that leads back to Victor Newman. In Kyle's mind, this is not just a personal crisis, but the result of calculated interference, a chain of events set in motion by someone who thrives on control and manipulation. Kyle's anger does not erupt in a single outburst. It builds, layer by layer, fueled by every perceived injustice, every indication that his family has been used as part of a larger game. That anger begins to reshape his thinking, pushing him toward choices that mirror the very strategies he claims to oppose. The line between defense and retaliation starts to blur, and once that line is crossed, there is no easy way back. Kyle is no longer just reacting. He is preparing, strategizing, stepping into a role he may not fully understand but feels compelled to embrace. Meanwhile, Victor remains a looming presence over all of it, a man accustomed to anticipating every move, to controlling outcomes before others even realize a game is being played. Yet even Victor cannot fully predict the consequences of emotional fallout on this scale. His actions may have been calculated, but the reactions they provoke are anything but controlled. As tensions rise and alliances begin to shift, the possibility emerges that Victor himself may be facing a rare moment of vulnerability, not because he has lost his power, but because the people around him are no longer willing to play by his rules. What makes this entire situation so volatile is not any single event, but the way each thread intertwines with the others, creating a network of pressure points that cannot all be managed at once. Jack's internal conflict feeds Patty's determination. Patty's presence accelerates Diane's suspicion. Diane's reaction intensifies Kyle's anger. Kyle's anger sets him on a path that leads directly toward Victor. And Victor's past actions continue to cast a shadow over everything, shaping outcomes in ways that cannot be easily undone. No one involved remains untouched. No one retains the safety of distance. Each character is pulled deeper into a situation that demands decisions. Not later, but now. Decisions that will define not only their relationships, but their sense of self. Jack must confront whether he is willing to face the truth or continue living behind a carefully constructed narrative. Diane must decide whether trust can be rebuilt once it has been fractured in this way. Patty must confront the possibility that her version of the truth may lead to destruction rather than validation. Kyle must choose whether revenge will protect his family or destroy what remains of it. And Victor must face the consequences of a game that may finally be spiraling beyond even his control. In the end, what hangs in the balance is not just a marriage, not just a family, but the fragile illusion that any of them ever truly had control over the forces shaping their lives. And as that illusion begins to shatter, what emerges is something far more dangerous than any single betrayal. The realization that once the truth is fully exposed, there may be nothing left worth saving, and no one left capable of stopping what comes next.